Welcome to Spiritual Reality. I want to talk with you today about receiving and giving encouragement. And this can be in any context that you think of. It might pertain to friendship. It might pertain to a working relationship. It could be in your marriage. But how do you receive and how do you give encouragement in a really meaningful way? And we're going to look in 1 Samuel chapter 30 in David's life and discover some answers to this. Verse 1, 1 Samuel 30. Then it happened, when David and his men came to Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekites had made a raid on the Negev and on Ziklag, and had overthrown Ziklag and burned it with fire. Now, by itself, that little verse doesn't mean much. But in the chapter preceding, we find that David has taken him and his small army and gone to the Philistines and said, we will ally with you in your war against the Amalekites or Moabites or whatever ites it was, and we'll join forces with you. And so they had this covenant situation worked out, and were doing that when suddenly some other bad boys from somewhere said, hey, wait a second, is that David from Israel? Is that the one who killed our giant? Is that the one the girls sing about? Saul has killed his thousands, but David his 10,000s, and most of them were Philistines. What do we want him with us for? When we get in battle, he'll go with the enemy and kill all of us. And the king said, all right, David, you got to go home. He felt bad. He trusted David, and they had a good relationship, but not with the people. Well, meanwhile, David's army, or a little prior to all this, had settled in this town called Ziklag. And so now they had left the town behind, all of them, to go to war. Apparently by now the army numbers about 600, we'll find out in a moment. And as they come back to home, they find out that the enemy, in verse 2, had taken captive the women and all who were in it, both small and great, without killing anyone, and carried them off and went their way. When David and his men came to the city, behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters had been taken captive. Oh, man. Then David and the people who were with him lifted their voices and wept until there was no strength in them to weep. I've known a few Jewish men, starting with my dad, who was some part Jewish, and the way a Jewish man cries, wow. Here's 601 men, and they are weeping at the loss of their families so loud, so long, there's no strength left in them to weep. David's 2 wives had been taken captive, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess and Abigail, the widow of Nabal the Carmelite. But that's not all. Moreover, David was greatly distressed because the people spoke of stoning him. For all the people were embittered, each one because of his own sons and his daughters, to say nothing of his wife. So this situation is as dark a moment as can come upon a person in leadership. David is down and David is out. And his 600-man army has people in it, I don't know how many, who are talking about stoning David. Now, how dumb is that? Did David cause this? Did David choose this? Did David do anything related to this other than react the same as they are? No. Who is David? He is the leader who's kept them alive by now for months, under constant threat of Saul and his people. Their lives have been spared. Here they are. And they need a leader now more than they ever have. And they want to stone him. That's how people are. That's how groups of people are. I hear all the time of yet another ministry started by a man 20 years ago, 30 years ago, greatly successful, numerically huge, the blessing of God evident, and he has a board, or he has deacons, or he has a committee, and what? He goes on vacation legitimately. While he's gone, they rise up and yank the rug and fire him and throw him out. That's modern day stoning. I don't know why people are like that. I don't know why people can't be responsible to do their job. And if they really think that the leader isn't doing his job, go and have a meeting. Talk to him. Show him this is what you're doing wrong. Not show him criticisms and anger and angst and nitpick, but show him that this is an issue that we can work together and correct. We're not looking to get rid of you or discredit you or usurp you. These men were making a great mistake, but for David it was like having a dart in the heart. Could kill him, and the pain of it. So his wives are gone, his city is gone, all the possessions and members of the family of his men are gone, and the people, his men, are embittered. So what did David do? David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. And I'll bet he thought back to the day that Jonathan strengthened him in the Lord his God. David got alone with God. He probably wrote a few psalms right here. Many of the psalms are the outpouring of the man at the lowest ebbs of his life. But he found encouragement as he brought praise and honor, and as he called on God to deal with his enemies. The so-called imprecatory psalms all ask God to judge and avenge and destroy those who have come against him. And that's a good thing. And David found strength. He found encouragement directly from the Lord his God. Where do you go when you are discouraged? Do you just infold, implode, and let it all just roll in on top of you and bury you? Maybe you go and talk to a friend. If that friend will help you find God in that time and encourage you in your fellowship with him, right on. Or maybe you have friends you get together and commiserate, as they say. Nobody's getting encouraged. Everybody's just out talking to everybody else on how bad their deal is. Not much future in that. David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. Well, and then he called on God. He got off the ephod, and Abiathar the priest, and he said, let's find out what I should do. Should I go pursue this mob and try to get our people back? And God told him through that communication tool, yes, you should. I'll be with you. I'll protect you. I'll give you victory. So in verse 10, David pursued, he and 400 men. For 200 who were too exhausted to cross the river, the brook Bezor, remained behind. So we have a band of 600, but only 400 are battle-worthy and battle-ready that day. 200 said, we're just beat, man. When David came to the 200, in verse 21, having won the battle and bringing back the spoil, and bringing back the 400, those who were too exhausted to follow him, who had also been left at the brook Bezor, they went out to meet David and to meet the people who were with him. So David approached the people and greeted them. Then all the wicked and worthless men among those who went with David said, because they did not go with us, we will not give them any of the spoil that we have recovered, except to every man his wife and his children, that they may lead them away and depart. Oh boy, have you been through that verse in your life yet? Have you been where scorekeepers and wicked and worthless, vengeful, sour, stabbing, creepy people want to cut off other people that are part of the family and exclude them because they didn't perform some way they want to just hurt them and hang them out to dry because they didn't go with us. They don't get anything because we're the ones that went and took it. It was all us. We did everything. And they're just like children, bratty children. David said in verse 23, "You must not do so, my brothers, with what the Lord has given us, who has kept us and delivered into our hand the band that came against us. And who will listen to you in this matter? For as his share is who goes down to the battle, so shall his share be who stays by the baggage. They shall share alike." And it's been like that from that day forward. It became a statute and an ordinance for Israel to this day. When you're part of an army, and your army goes to war, and you're too tired or sick or something to where it's not optional, you can't go, and you stay by the stuff, when the army comes back with spoil, you have an equal share with them. Because you're part of the family. You're not choosing to be a slacker. You're not ignoring your responsibility. On this day, at this time, you're too tired. Now, like I said, this may come to pertain to your marriage. Some days it's very painful that your spouse is too tired. Too tired to go with you somewhere. I get all crazy when that happens to us. Kathy is an amazing, hard-working, trooper. There's just no way to describe it. The work all around the house and the yard and all kind of stuff. And my health has altered my participation in a lot of physical things that used to be routine, and she picks up the load and does it all. But every now and again I say, I got to go here or there. Will you go with me? And she says, no, I can't. I am too exhausted. And I just, for a number of reasons, sometimes get really, really irritated. Sometimes I'm afraid. If it's dark and I've got to go somewhere and find an address while I'm driving the car, I'm sunk. So I'm immediately fearful and reacting out of that. Other times out of I just want her with me. Other times, I suppose, mainly years ago, but still might happen, I just want control over her. I don't want to be gone. You're here doing what you want. I want you with me doing what I want. So, you know what? That stuff needs to get canceled out of our lives, out of our hearts. There can't be feeling. That can't be allowed. There needs to be in its place the bestowment and the pouring out of encouragement. I'm sorry you can't go. Is there anything I can get you? Anything I can do for you? I'm sorry you're so tired. I'm sorry your pain is so great. Kathy has connective tissue disorders that just nobody else can understand what it's like. I'm sorry. But I'll be back. And maybe I'll bring you something if I can remember. That's another thing that went out the back door with the physical abilities, was remembering anything. But not judging, not looking down, not belittling. No snide comments. I've seen and heard it all. I've seen people just walk by a little clump of others, and the little clump is part of the ones who can't, and just make some catty, snotty remark. That kind of stuff is so wrong. I didn't print out Philippians 2 on my note sheet, but I should have. I would encourage you to read verses 1 through 4 when you have a chance. They talk about what it ought to be like to be part of a church and the types of encouragement. There's a fourfold listing of encouragement in verses 1 and 2 that ought to come to everybody in the church. And our humility and ability to put each other ahead of ourselves is what will generate this encouraging, blessing, heartening aura about us. David said, you can't do this. And for one other thing, the stuff that you're acting so petty and selfish about, is not stuff that you got on your own. God gave it to you. Who do you think you are? Get nice. Because this is how to give encouragement. I got encouragement from God. I'm giving encouragement to those who are weak. That's how Jesus does it. The smoldering reed, he doesn't put out. The broken branch, he doesn't snap off. The imprisoned soul, he doesn't walk past. He binds the broken, sets the captive free, gives sight to the blind, strength to the weary. Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden. I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Learn of me. I'm gentle and humble. And yoked up with me, you'll find rest for your soul. Because my burden and my load are light." Lord, thank you for the way you encourage us and never judge us. You're never harsh with us. Help us to be that way with each other. Come into our hearts and form that attitude of encouragement and acceptance and respect in us, that people will be blessed by the things we say and think and do. Thank you, Lord. In your name, amen. Well, this has been fun. A week on encouragement from God, from angels, from friends, and then sharing it with each other. Hope you get a chance to do that. I'll bet you know somebody who could use some encouragement. I'm sure I do, and maybe this week there'll be that opportunity. Well, Spiritual Reality is brought to you by Rekindle the Flame Ministries at the Hub in Midland, Texas. God bless you.